off. Now
We
it's
lift it off
totally
now.
lifted
Lift
off.
off is going on and occurring. I love heights. This is great. So high in the sky right now. Oh my God. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
wow, it's like amazing. Hi,
Good.
hello.
Hi.
Shalom,
Hello.
wonderful human being. Hello, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I've chosen just now to start cleaning my glasses. I don't know why. I'm so
You
sorry.
had
They're
15
itchy.
minutes. You
I
didn't do
literally
it.
did.
I'm
I
gonna
had so
deduct
much
this from
time.
your salary.
I'm getting paid. But thank you so much for having me. And hi, everybody. I hope you're having a lovely day.
Yeah, they are now that you're here.
Okay, you
Yay.
stop. Oh, TD Bell, thank you for getting me that sub. It's really sweet of you. Thank
TD
you.
Bill, thank you.
Fine.
So sweet. Thank you so kindly. Aw. I have to ask you, I have like 40 different kinds of rainbows. So do you want to be little smiley rainbow? Hold on. Little
Okay.
smiley rainbow.
Okay.
Holdy hands rainbow.
Holding hands rainbow is kind of cute. Okay.
Right? Okay. Sunshine rainbow.
Okay.
Okay. Shooting cloud rainbow.
This is so many good rainbows.
I know. And then balloon rainbow. And then star rainbow. And I think I'm done. No. Sun rainbow.
It never ends. All right, can I see
the
two sun?
last one.
Oh,
Vomiting
that's
rainbow.
cute. Oh, you're so happy. Can I see the two sun ones together, please? And then I will select my fighter.
Okay. This is very important, fam. This
It
could be an
is.
interview, but instead,
I'm gonna pick the one on the
watch hand or non-watch hand.
I'm gonna pick the watch hand.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent choice, which I would have said either way, but it is an excellent choice, truly. I kept discovering.
If it's a choice being made by me.
I
it's
kept
an excellent choice.
like I didn't realize I had this. I typed in rainbow cutouts into Amazon, and it just sent me this plethora of amazingness.
That's beautiful. They're wonderful. I want them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you have one on the. It's going on there. Anyway. Hi! Hello, everyone! Hi. Hello! This is the beautiful, wonderful, kind, amazing, very thoughtful bread witchery.
The very humble Holly. That's me.
Yeah, very humble.
Endlessly humble.
I like humble. I'm the one giving you plays. Oh
you're reading the script that I gave you really well. You're doing great.
Yeah, hold on. What does this say? Choke me out? What? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
I didn't expect that.
says, Holly, your butt looks amazing today. 10 out of 10. That's what it says.
I wouldn't lie to people like that, though. I've never seen your butt.
Oh, okay. Oh my God. For a second, I was like, that was stone cold.
That was so mean.
Oh my God.
That would have been so. But then I was like, I have not seen her butt. That's rude. I can't lie to people.
That's true. I respect that. I respect
That's true.
honesty.
But yeah. So tell us. I guess I'm gonna ask. So for those of you who don't know, Harley and I have known each other in one way or another for years now. I think like since we both started on Twitch. I want to say.
Yeah, I think we've known each other for like 3 years.
Yeah, something like that. And have been in some capacity around each other. And then this past year, I actually saw you at TwitchCon and like did not have the guts to say hi. But then, yeah, and repeatedly, like I would keep walking by you and be like, I should say hi, and then be like, no, I'm not cool enough. And then I finally had the guts to like ask you to participate in something. And then since then, like now we have an actual relationship somewhat happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anywho, so that's the story. That's my perspective. But if
that's our love story.
If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Holly, and yeah, I've known Em for like 3 years so far because I've been basically streaming that long on and off. I take a lot of hiatuses because I have ADHD. It's very severe, but now I'm medicated for it. Woo! Happy days. And I stream a lot of story stuff on my channel, mainly narrative-driven games. Usually my camera is nicer than this. I have a DSLR like Em, I don't have as pretty a setup as Em, but I have a DSLR usually, but it's packed away because I'm going to Canada for a month tomorrow. I'm not nervous at all. So I'm really excited to be here as a little social thing before my trip. And yeah, I stream a lot of stuff like that. My community is very leftist, very chaotic, a lot of mayhem. We love choosing the options in games that just cause the most trouble. But we're also very sweet and very pro-social issues, that kind of thing. And we don't shy away from talking about politics and social justice and that sort of thing, which I really love about my community. And it's called the Oven Coven, which is the funniest thing I've ever thought of, and I will never peak it. So
that's peak comedy, Oven Coven. That's
There's
adorable.
Toronto Bliffle. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So first of all, thank you so much. I know that there's like chaos happening on your end, and you still made this interview happen. So thank you, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I love you.
Thank you. I love you too. So that is lovely. So you talk about social justice and all these issues. So I guess let's dive into like, why is mental health important to you?
Yeah, fair. I think mental health is important to me, and I don't consider myself necessarily a mental health advocate. I think it's important for people that are of marginalized groups, like people with mental illnesses, to be able to step away from having to be an advocate necessarily and just be allowed to like exist, you know?
Yep.
So that's me. So, you know, the most I can speak on is like my experience and what I've studied in terms of like when I did some psychology courses at school, and friends of mine who have had, you know, various mental health problems and coping mechanisms and that kind of thing. And it's just really important to me because I think that we are in a space where just we live in a society, and I think it's really common for mental health things to be either you go to like the doctor for it and that kind of thing, you speak with them about it and they're horrendously underfunded and it's all a disaster, or it's often pushed at you to solve any struggles that you're having or alleviate any anxieties that you have with purchases or things that you need to buy because
You fix it.
capitalism
Fix
is
it.
fix it. And I think it's really important to, you know, just make resources available where we can, that are free or that are very easy to get to and they're very accessible and that kind of thing. And of course, that's not like a substitution for professional medical help and stuff, but there's a lot of mental health insight and self-exploration things that can be done and should be done within oneself. And I think that society encourages us to not do that necessarily. So I think it's really important that there's spaces like this where there are discussions and that sort of thing, and people are encouraged like think thoughts and look into themselves and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's important. That's what's important to me, on a level like beyond just myself, and why my own mental health is important, because I like
Because you
functioning.
have,
It's pretty
yeah,
neat.
functioning's
I
pretty
like being
cool.
happy,
Having
and
a
yeah, it's pretty
brain,
good.
using the
Yeah.
brain when you need
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But when it
pretty
comes
good.
to why I think mental health advocacy in general is important, that's one of the reasons. And also normalizing stuff that's super stigmatized is really important too.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I think people are like, well, it's been panini, so everybody's talking about mental health now, so we got it. And then, like the situation yesterday with the tennis player came out, where they asked for accommodation. People are like, you're just asking for special credit. And she's like, okay, I guess I just won't do this then, since I can't be accommodated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is common in like so many workplaces. And I feel
Yeah.
like so many disabled people have that story. And it's so disappointing to see it happening in like the big leagues of sports.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry I brought that up. That was not in our press kit, but
that's fine.
Yeah.
How dare you carry on an authentic conversation with me and think of things.
All right, that's it. We're due for our next question. You're going over.
Oh, sorry.
For the
All
last
right.
one.
Yeah. Next question. Yeah.
But so that's why mental health is important to you, and you are one of those people. You figured out a little bit later. Like normally people think of figuring out your mental health issues and figuring out like who you are, LGBTQ, if you are on that spectrum, like. People think that that's the thing you figure out in your teenage years, and like that's the only time that you could do it. But you figured that out a little bit later, right?
Yeah, I was. I think I nailed it down a little bit later, because in terms of like my mental health situation, I have ADHD. I am not diagnosed with CPTSD, but I'm like convinced I have CPTSD because of like childhood stuff.
Sure.
And I always knew something wasn't right, but I could never figure out what it was. When I was a teenager, I was like, oh, I just have like psychotic depression. And then when I got older, I was like, oh no, it's bipolar disorder. And then my parents always thought that I was autistic, but didn't do anything about it. They were just like, she's autistic.
She's different.
Anyway,
yeah.
I was like, what? And I didn't get like actually looked into or anything like that. So I just grew up like not knowing what was wrong with me, and it was really frustrating. And I knew that if I could just figure out what was wrong, I would be happier. And like every mental health professional that I went to, which wasn't a ton because resources are low, would always be very like, oh, I'm gonna like you can just go to talking therapy about it. And I was like, no, I'd like a diagnosis. And I'd like to know what this is. And they were like, it won't make you any happier having a label. And I was like, it definitely will, because I've spent 25 years being like, something's not right, but I can't tell what. And then I figured out that I had ADHD because of, I think, reasons that we'll discuss later when we're talking about the internet.
Don't you dare go ahead of it. No,
I'm not going.
You go.
I swear.
Go.
I
No,
got the
just
press
go.
kit. I
Just
got
speak
it.
naturally.
But I figured out that I had ADHD, and I went and I got consulted for it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you got that," and I was like, "Oh," and that just, it helped me a lot. And now I'm on some medication. It's not super strong medication, but it really helps. And I feel a lot more on top of things. And I think it is like sad that I had to like struggle as long as I did, because ADHD, I feel like you mentioned, I think ADHD in particular is very like childhood focused. Like lots of resources for it about kids, or if you have a kid who has it, or if you're a kid with it and that kind of thing. And ADHD has been like ruining my life since ever. Like I've always like dropped out of jobs.
Amen.
And fell behind on schoolwork. My house was like always messy, and I just like wouldn't see the mess until the last second, and then it would get overwhelming. And it was just like, and I have like, because of the way that my PTSD and my ADHD I think interact, the psychiatrist thought for a second that I might have BPD because of my emotional like zigzagging, and like rejection sensitive dysphoria and stuff. And it was just like destroying my life. And I was like, why is it so hard for me? I don't understand what is wrong. Like, I don't get it. But I figured it out, and I'm much happier now. I am sad that it took as long as it did to get to that point. So
yeah, but it sucks. It's exciting once you get to it because it's so validating, right? Did you have that experience of being like, I am not, like, nothing is wrong with me, I'm just different, and now I know how different I am?
Yeah, I really do think that like I am very like comforted by labels and that kind of thing. I know I'm not like relying on them, but I'm very comforted by labels, and I was very happy to be like, oh, I have like this certain neurodivergence. That makes everything make sense now, because nothing made sense before. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I do just kind of want to get into labels in general, because this is like a hot topic. This is a hot button issue of like, do you need a label, and why do you need it? And I guess this will also kind of tie nicely into like non-binary, because you do also identify as femme. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The way that I perceive my gender is very like it's weird. I'm one of those people where I'm like, I don't like love the term non-binary, and if anything I resonate more with cis, but I know I'm literally by definition not cis. So I think it is one of those things where there's like okay, so I'm non-binary, right? And basically my thing is that I go between being a woman and being like a gender. And my womanhood is a thing that I am a woman whenever I like play video games, or when I did as a kid. I always wanted to play as a girl, and I know that I am that as well. And I don't mind being called a woman, even though I flip back between being a gender and a woman, depending on how I'm feeling, because my womanhood feels like a thing that I've carried with me all my life as well. I think gender fluid is where I would fall, Bliffle, I'm pretty sure. But womanhood feels like a coat that I've worn since ever, and I've gone through so many things because of that coat, and I've tried to fit into that coat so many times, and I like how the coat looks sometimes and stuff. So I'm very attached to my womanhood and my experience with it. But it does often feel like something that I've put on that isn't actually me. But some days it feels like me. But and I know that genderqueer falls under the trans umbrella, because cis is if you identify with the gender that you were given at birth, trans is if you don't, non-binary by definition falls into the trans umbrella. But I don't like calling myself trans, and I think it's because I have the mental image a lot of people have, where it's like there's cis, non-binary, and trans, because trans means if you've transitioned, or if you're just a boy or just a girl, and I think my brain still says that, and that's why I don't resonate with the trans label. And I'm okay with that. I'm like at peace with that. I know what I am, and I'm cool with that. And I'm fine with being put in women's spaces where it's appropriate, and non-binary spaces where it's appropriate, and gender fluid spaces where it's appropriate, and being called those certain things. I'm like, yeah, that fits me as well. That's like totally, that works. So
interesting. I say interesting, not like a scientific experiment, but more like that is somebody who doesn't have that experience that is different. That is not like I wake up every day and I'm just like, no, I'm a woman. Like I don't question, I don't think about it. So that must have been like, but you got to this point where you're like you said, you got to the point where you figured out, hey, this is a coat. I'm wearing a coat. Like it's not it's me, and it's my favorite coat. It's a great coat. I've worn it in. It's awesome. but it's still a coat that I wear. So there was a moment where you came to realize that, and I guess without even having to like identify that specific moment, was that another one of those like, aha, this all makes sense? Like, did you read about it and it connected, like, and it connected everything for you, or?
I've always been in very inclusive spaces online. Like I grew up
Mm-hmm.
on Tumblr and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was never like out about gender stuff because I have no intention to physically transition or anything like that. So there was never any need for me to be very out about my gender when I was younger and stuff. So I kind of was always floated around laughing at those jokes that are like, my gender is a raccoon, and like ones that are made by trans people, not the
Mm-hmm.
I'm an attack helicopter, the ones where it's like the three
Sure.
genders,
Right.
man, woman, and online, like that kind of
Right.
thing. I love those jokes. But I always liked those. I never really had an epiphany moment, I don't think. I did have a slight epiphany moment when I figured out how to tell whether I'm feeling like womanly or like nothingness,
Mm-hmm.
basically, which is I just follow where the euphoria is, because we talk about gender dysphoria a lot, and gender
Mm-hmm.
dysphoria is obviously when you're triggered into feeling like if you're trans and you're being misgendered, you'll probably experience
Mm-hmm.
dysphoria,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. But I follow the gender euphoria, so if someone calls me like they them, I'm like, oh yeah, that fits me, that's cool. If someone calls me she her, I'm like, yeah, I like that, that's cool. And if someone calls me he him, I'm like, I don't like that, I'm uncomfy now. So I just go with whatever makes me feel like happiest on the day, and then I can tell basically. So if someone calls me she her and I'm like, that makes me feel kind of fine, kind of weird, but mostly fine, but they them sounds really great today, I like that one, then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I follow where the euphoria goes, and that's how I figure things out, and that helped a lot when I figured that. So,
and I want to make it clear, like, I'm not trying to connect two to two, like neurodivergence and being non-binary are connected. I'm not saying
okay.
that, but those are both things, right? Like, it's not neurotypical to be divergent, right? It's not binary to be non-binary. So
Yeah,
in the sense of these like different labels than what society expects us to have, in that I feel like they connect because they're both a realization of like, I'm not this thing that society expects that I am, in
yeah.
both senses. So it sounds like your neurodivergence kind of came to you from the sense of, okay, I need to be able to explain this because I don't feel like I'm fitting in. Whereas the realization that you are non-binary came from the perspective of, I'm not this, I'm not that. I think I'm this. All right, this feels good. Okay. Like, no, I don't feel like neurodivergence is something that you can be like, no, it feels good to be ADHD. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And also with my neurodivergence as well, it's very like, got it. That's what it is. Awesome. Now I can like get treated for that, and I can
Right.
get Medicaid for that, and I feel good about it. Awesome. Whereas with my gender, I don't know, I see it in a much less medicalized context.
Mm.
And it's just a I'm existing kind of thing. Like I never feel the need to improve on how I feel about my gender or change anything about how I'm presenting. Whereas with ADHD, I'm like, I want to improve and I want to grow and I want to get better. Obviously, it's like we have it forever, but like we can treat it and that
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
have better coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my gender, I'm just like, I'm just here. I don't know. This is my thing? What are you? This is my gender feels very, because everyone experiences disorders differently.
Of course.
But my ADHD feels like ADHD. My gender feels like my gender. It's just mine.
Mm.
This is a very singular experience up in this noggin, whereas the ADHD doesn't feel like a singular experience.
That's
That makes
really
sense.
fascinating because I mean, and I think that's the difference between having a diagnosis and not having a diagnosis, right? Because when you have a diagnosis, it's you're able to be like, I fit in this nice little box. My brain, which otherwise this was for me at least, feels like my brain and things that happen in my brain feel like they don't make sense. So if I can put them neatly into this box that I know other people have experienced these things are also in this same box with me, I feel like my brain isn't everywhere. I feel like it's in this place. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? I feel like that's such a wild metaphor.
It makes
I'm
sense
sorry.
to me because I no, it's okay. That's a fine metaphor. I had a similar thing where I was like, oh gee, I have a lot of stuff. I have like an eating disorder, and I have like an anxiety disorder, and I have like sensory like issues and stuff, and I also have and then once I got diagnosed with ADHD, I was like, oh, these are all symptoms of ADHD. Lol. Like, oh, and that happened for me. Which
Yeah,
I
that's awesome. You just and it just fits. Yeah. And then the conversation goes into, so you've not been diagnosed with CPTSD, but that's one of those things that you do strongly identify with. And I want to dive into this. I know this is a weird topic. So I want to, before we jump into it, I want to make sure that it's clear to everybody, like, these are our opinions. Harley's opinion is theirs. My opinion is mine. And this is not medical advice. I'm not talking about anything that's backed by science in a sense. Because obviously backed by science would mean diagnosis and receiving a medical diagnosis. But I recently read something online and it resonated with me very strongly. And it just kind of hit the ground running for me in this direction of, well, why is it that we need diagnosis to feel valid in our medical condition when we have the thing before we get diagnosed? Right? Like, it's not like you need to come in and get diagnosed with being trans in order for you to be trans. Like, you're trans. And it's kind of not exactly the same. It's not one-to-one, not saying it is, but it's very similar to, like, you, especially with neurodivergence, like something like depression, anxiety, they can come, they can go. You might have them your whole life. They might be chemical. They might be just situational. But like something like neurodivergence, you're in or out. Like, yeah, there's not a little bit of neurodivergent. Well, it is a spectrum, but yeah, it's not like I kind of have it, but not really. It is a yes, no question. And then there's a spectrum within that yes and no. Yeah. So where I'm going with this, a very long spiel, is that self-diagnosis, I'm coming to a place where I'm recognizing that, well, self-diagnosis is not valid in medical terms. It literally isn't. It can't be. You're not a doctor and you're diagnosing yourself. It is a valid way of self-identifying.
Yeah, I feel like, because I think that's the only real downside for self-diagnosis, I feel, is like, if you only have a self-diagnosis, then you can't get treatment. Like, you have to have and which sucks, because like if you want to actually transition, you actually do have to go and technically get diagnosed as a trans. But I don't know, because again, like I said, I grew up on Tumblr where self-diagnosis was like rampant and that kind of thing. And I do think that when I was self-diagnosing with things, it didn't hurt me at all. I haven't heard from anybody who was like hurt by their own experience of self-diagnosing or anything, unless they like, I feel like the only backlash would be if like you used it as, if you just self-diagnosed with BPD and decided you have BPD, but you don't have BPD, but like you just decided you're like, I must have BPD because I feel these things sometimes. And then you would just like lean further into the symptoms of BPD that were just within your general personality and then just blame it on the BPD, which I can definitely see some narcissistic teens doing possibly if they wanted to, but not everyone's going to do that. But yeah, for me, I was like self-diagnosing with bipolar and being like, that must be what it is. And it did mean that I got to, I read books written by bipolar people about being bipolar, and I got more perspective on that. And I looked up resources for bipolar and stuff like that. And it did help me still, and it still broadened my perspective, and it did help me with my mood swings and stuff, which is great.
But I mean, that would be crappy if because I feel like doctors use this as a way to explain, like, this is why I don't tell my patient. I literally had a doctor who was like, I'm not going to tell you what I diagnose you with because I don't want you to walk around with this label. I don't want you to, it's like, it doesn't matter. Well, kind of like you were told like, oh yeah, you have something, but I'm not, you don't need to know what it is. Like, kind of similar to that. My doctor was like, well, I'm not going to tell you what your diagnosis is because I don't want you to like, what difference does it make to you what you're diagnosed with? And for a few things, like as a mental health advocate, I feel like I don't want to misrepresent something. That's number one. I don't want to tell people I have depression when I don't. I feel like the stakes are a little bit higher to not say I have depression when I really have bipolar. I don't want to misrepresent that, especially if people are looking at me for some kind of an example. But I think it's a problem, period, if you take any of your personality traits or anything that of your disabilities or whatever it is, and you just use them as a scapegoat. You use them as a way to explain away issues instead of taking responsibility for them, right? Like, I think that's the main argument against it. I think that, and also just leaning more into symptoms, because I am definitely somebody where because of like how trauma affected me, I when I was younger, I was very like blank slatey sort of. So if you put me in a room with people that act a certain way, I would probably act the same way as them. Or if you kept telling me that I was a certain thing, I would just become that thing because I would just believe you.
So I can see people like that.
That's trauma, though.
I know.
That's being, well, so listen, I can't speak for your experience, but I know when I did that, looking back at it and having now spoken to a therapist about it, it was because I was so brought up to believe that like I had to be whatever other people told me to be, that I became this chameleon, and then I would lean into whatever because I wasn't allowed to have my own personality. So
yeah,
I think that's trauma's fault.
Yeah, it's definitely a trauma thing, but that's where I can see people that self-diagnose, possibly they could be like way off base, and then because they have a diagnosis, they start to lean into the other symptoms and just be like, oh, like, well, I've clearly got BPD, even though I'm missing like 4 symptoms, but I definitely have that. And then you just start unconsciously leaning into the other symptoms. And I can definitely see young people doing that because I've known people like that.
Sure.
So there's that.
Yeah. No, listen, this is not against diagnosis, like in any shape or form. I want to make that super clear in case anybody wants to quote me later. Like, I'm not against diagnosis. I am for self-identification of a possible diagnosis as a step towards diagnosis. I don't think you like cannot. I'm very against like, oh, don't think you have depression just because you have a few symptoms. Like, no, think about it. If you think you have depression, look into it. Find out what's going on. You can't afford to go to a doctor. Like, do your research, do your reading.
Yeah, because you might find stuff that helps you anyway, even if you have
exactly.
Yeah, even if you have like seasonal depression, but you think you have chronic depression, you'll still find stuff that will help you with the depression when you're there. Because I found stuff that helped me with my mania while I was looking at bipolar stuff. So it helped me.
Yeah. No, and Ella, I do agree. Diagnosis doesn't have to define who you are, and I don't think it should define anybody. But at the same time, because I have gotten a diagnosis from a doctor, I have let it define me. Like I basically got the green light to be able to say, oh, I know I do this because of depression. Oh, I know I do this because of ADHD, because a doctor said so. But I could have given myself the green light to make those mistakes, even if they were due to ADHD, before getting a diagnosis. Does that make more sense? Like,
that makes sense to me.
I feel like I wish I was more human towards myself, instead of being like, oh, something's wrong with me, I'm broken, I have ADHD, that means I'm unbroken, I just have ADHD. I wish I had looked at it and been like, oh, I'm not broken, but also something's different about me, and this is how you explain it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like people are always like, well, if you actually had something wrong with you, you wouldn't know, because like crazy people don't know they're crazy. So like forget about it. And I'm like, that's not good. We should probably think on things.
Let's back that up. We're gonna think. We're gonna use our noggins all the time, not just when convenient for other people. Yeah. Yeah. But yes, this is great. This is awesome. Okay. But so you said you were off Tumblr and stuff. How did the internet help you find who you are? Because this does also tie into self-diagnosis. A lot of the conversations around self-diagnosis are people on Twitter being like, including me, being like, my ADHD means that I do this thing and it's real annoying and I hate doing it, but I do it all the time. Thanks. And then people being like, oh my God, do I have ADHD? So therefore, there is this idea that you like help perpetuate this problem of self-diagnosis. Whereas I personally feel like it's perpetuating the solution of self-awareness onto people.
Yeah, and also the awareness that there are things that neurodivergent people have, which neurotypical people have. Like lots of people will have effectively was symptom of ADHD in like a lower way, but they don't have ADHD. It's just like, oh yeah, sometimes people are like inattentive and their brain is not chronically. Or, like, and it's like, that's what it is. It becomes a disability when it affects your life significantly. That's exactly how it works. So yeah, and I do think that for me, definitely seeing, I forget how it even was that I was like, oh, it's ADHD, I gotta check for that. I think it was because I did see a bunch of stuff suddenly on my Twitter and TikTok, like everybody does, about ADHD and stuff, which I think is just because I was watching a lot of stuff about it. And I think some people are incorrectly resonating with it and then like commenting on it and be like, do I have this? And that boosts it even more because, you know, especially on TikTok where it's like your brain on TikTok is literally being instructed to pay attention for a very short amount of time and
To
then
this
get a dopamine hit to the
one
next
very
scroll.
specific thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, the brain's elastic. You're training it to just have this hit release thing that works for ADHD as well. But I still have TikToks about it. And then I think I linked it with how my parents were like, oh, you're autistic. And then I knew already that autism and ADHD are in the same wheelhouse. So I was like, oh, let's check for this. And then also actually, people who I knew online telling me that I seemed like I had ADHD, and they themselves had diagnosed ADHD. There's like 3 people that were in my community who were like, Holly, you really do seem like you have ADHD. You do a lot of stuff that I do. And I was like, interesting, noted. But I definitely think that being online expanded my perspective and my ability to know about different experiences with different disorders, because lots of people might know what like narcissistic personality disorder is, for example, and they'll know what it means, but they will just know that. They won't have known somebody with it and known like another person with it and known like a diverse range of experiences about it. Whereas I feel like I have, because I've been just terminally online my whole life and in different sorts of spaces and met lots of different people with different disorders and had like a broadened horizon because of that. So it's mostly social for me, just like seeing people and people talking about stuff. And yeah.
I wonder like, because I feel like there are arguments against that as well. People being like, oh, I think you have ADHD because you do these things that I do. And I think it is important to remind people, and that's what I try to do every time I make one of these posts, is like, okay, but you could also just be really inattentive. Like you could be somebody who loses their shit all the time. Like you don't know where to, like that could be your personality trait. But if you lose all your stuff all the time, lock your keys in the refrigerator, leave your stuff in the microwave,
I leave my keys in the front of my door like all the time. I had someone like knock on my door and they were in their car and they were like, "You left your keys near your door," and I was like, "Thank you, I could have died. Thank you."
Thanks for that. Yeah, no, but that's literally it. Like it's not, if you recognize this one quality that I'm talking about, thing to look into. But if everything I'm saying to you as I'm describing my life living with ADHD is starting to resonate with you, like some red flags.
Yeah, I'm like, these are some sirens that are...
They're loud. They're getting louder. They're getting louder. So a lot of it is, it also sounds like a lot of it is like what makes you feel comfy cozy and what makes you feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. This is who I am. This is me figuring out who I am. I guess my question to you is like, how do you land on stuff? Like, is that just like, this feels comfortable? Like, how do you know, okay, maybe I've outgrown this. Maybe it's actually, we were talking about this before you came on stream, right? I was like, I'm bisexual and this is my first Pride Month. Whee! And then people were like, well, are you pansexual? And I was like, what? And then we started talking about the difference between bisexual and pansexual, which according to some research is like absolutely none. And according to other people and people's understanding is like everything is different. So that's one of the, like, how do you know when you're on the path versus maybe it's time to try on a different coat?
Yeah. Well, it's because I'm not afraid to just like look up stuff and just like look into things and be like, I'm gonna go on all of the wikis for all of the sexuality stuff and look at all of it. Interesting. Like I think technically I would even fall into like gender fae, I think, which is
that sounds adorable.
Yeah, it's very sweet. I think it's a fringe identity, and it just basically means that your identity fluctuates through many things, but it never falls into masculine or manhood. And I was like, oh, and one of my community members, Flambly, was like, I think this sounds like you, because I was looking at stuff and I was like, oh yeah, that is like me, that's nice. But I do a lot of like introspection and stuff because it's part of like my religious practices to just like be constantly reassessing and like doing little philosophy sessions inside my own head and that kind of thing to like figure out my identity and that sort of stuff. So I think it's mostly that. And then just also just existing in very diverse spaces and hearing people say stuff all the time and me being like, I agree with that. I don't agree with that. I agree with that. And like learning as I go. Leave milk out at night for the gender fae. The gender fae are going to come and they're going to take my child and replace it with a different one.
That's right. That's what they do. And then your child wakes up gay the next morning. That's how it works.
No, not the gender fae.
Not the gender fae. Or wait, do you leave like a penny under your pillow for the gender fae so they could turn you gay?
Or is it to... Yeah, I like that. I like that idea.
Or do you pay, is it like the Fae Mafia where you pay them so that your child doesn't turn gay?
Yeah, or if you're not gay, you have to pay the gender Fae tax.
I like that one. I like that one the most. I just recently stopped paying my gender Fae taxes. It's great. It's worked out really well.
That's good.
For me.
Congratulations. So happy for you.
So happy for me. But how do you encourage other people? So like you talked about your stream and being super leftist and all that stuff. Like, how do you encourage other people in your community to continue doing this kind of research and looking into this stuff and figuring it out? And
I don't know, because I've had, I think I have 3 so far people that ended up realizing that they were trans women or non-binary women because of me. And they've like said to me like, yeah, you were like one of the main reasons why I figured this out. Whereas like some people will come out in my community and they'll just mention like, also this is one of those spaces that, you know, contributed to me thinking about it. But I've had some people like directly be like, it was mostly you. And I'm like, what? Which is like, not terrifying, but it's very like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that I was apparently having this effect on people.
An influencer.
I'm an influencer. What? And I think it's just because I think, and they would know better than me, but I think it's just because I speak very casually about these things and I'm very like clear cut, and I also like to not just leave it at like platitudes. Like I don't just be like, yeah, happy Pride Month, everybody. Like, trans women are women. Anyway, moving forward, like I think it's more, I think saying trans women are women is nice, but it doesn't really bring anything, like it doesn't, there's a lot more to it than that. For example, it's like just an example of like things that I'll just unpick on my stream aloud. And I'll say like, yeah, trans women and women's great, but like the problem is not just that trans women aren't viewed as women, it's subtle transphobic things throughout our lives and the intersection between like race and class and transphobia and like casual transphobic jokes and stigma that we have to unwork and that kind of thing. Like there's a lot that you can do other than just being like, they're women, but bye now. And I will often like mention those things and like debunk those things. And if I see a game where like if someone's queer coded or something, I'll mention that they're queer coded, and chat will be like, how are they queer coded? And I was like, well, this is what queer coding is if they have this and this and this thing. And I'm just very like, I don't know. I know what I believe and I'm very firm about that. And I'm always like fine with, I'm open to people in chat discussing stuff with me. But I think it's just the fact that I bring everything down to like a very ground level of like relatable. And I'm very willing, if someone's like, what does that mean? Just like talk it out to them in like layman's terms. And I know that that's like a critique, I think, of some LGBTQIA spaces where people are like, well, how was I supposed to know like this thing off the bat? I wasn't trying to be bigoted. I just didn't know. And it's not a marginalized individual's responsibility to like cushion your feelings and stuff. And they can be as upfront with you as they'd like to be without being horribly rude. But I have the spoons and I have the emotional energy to like explain stuff to people and bring it down to whatever level they need it brought down to and ground it and make it more approachable, I think. So I think that might be why. I guess I don't 100% know. I am glad I help people though, which is nice.
That's amazing. I mean, I don't think you have to have like a clear, like, this is why, and it's the only this. And so I like that. I like that. It's just, it's open-ended. Like, I know things because I know things, and I try to tell people the things that I know. And then if that helps them figure out their own stuff, awesome. Great. We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ADHD, okay, going back to, I know we're all over the place.
I'm loving it. I think this is part of us having ADHD.
It is.
We have to, like, switch back and forth.
I think this is why we work so well. Like, whenever we've done panels and stuff, I'm like, I'm on Harley's wavelength. Like, before you're like, I'm freaking out because I'm doing this thing. I'm like, I don't know. I've been doing it for 20 minutes and I like don't care anymore. So just do it. But I didn't spill that. Congratulations to me.
Well done. Go team.
Go team. So so you talked about ADHD and the fact that you wanted to diagnose and stuff. And do you mind sharing a little bit about like what your experience was like figuring out that you have ADHD a little bit more in depth? So you talked about that you like went to a doctor and stuff, but what were maybe some specific things, if you don't mind, again, sharing, that you're like, I caught that I was doing this a lot, and I caught that I was doing this a lot, and then that thing, and then that thing, and
the things for me that really stuck out was messiness, like just abysmal amounts of mess, even though I just like, I wouldn't like see the mess, and then I would like see it all at once, and I'd be like, oh my God. And it's like the incapability of keeping things clean, basically. The executive dysfunction was really bad. The way that I would like have trouble being like, well, I'm lying in bed, I can just go and make cereal. And I'd be like, but that means standing up and going down the stairs and getting a bowl and pouring the cereal into the bowl and getting milk from the fridge and pouring the spoon. Oh my God. And then that's just too many things. Also, this is a weird thing, and I don't even know if this is an ADHD thing, but I noticed about myself, I've stopped doing it now more that I'm medicated. I don't know how to explain this. I would very much brute force things. Like if I had a pile of books that I needed to pick up and they were all ordered wrong, so if you look at it, you can tell that pile of books is about to fall over, I would still just pick it up as it was. I'd be like, I have to move them. They have to be moved. I wouldn't like reorganize the books. Or if I'm trying to like pull something out from like a bundle of wires, I would not unwork the wires. I would just grab the thing and be like, all right, you come here. And then like all the things and it was just like, ah. And that would result in me like spilling things or breaking things a lot. And I was like, this is bad. So I don't know why I do that. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing, but I did it. And then the like jumping around the topics, I noticed, and I just always thought I was just a very gregarious, talkative person kind of thing. So that wasn't like a huge red flag for me, but it was something that bothered me about myself and the way that I felt like I had.
Same.
Yeah, and I felt like I felt like I knew who I was and I knew what I wanted to say and how I wanted to come off, but then something would get lost between my brain and my mouth and I would end up just seeming like a rambling mess. And that really frustrated me. I didn't understand why. And then last of all was like the focus issues started to creep up more and more throughout quarantine, where I would be trying to work. And the way that I described it was like, it would feel like what I needed to focus on was like a cube, right? And then my focus felt like water just spilling all over the cube and not actually catching onto it when I needed to like stay on the cube. And it just felt like I was just like gliding across the thing that I had to do, but never actually fully getting into it. And that just got worse and worse. And I felt like my brain was like deteriorating. And that was the hugest red flag for me.
Okay. All right. And then so how was the process in the UK of getting diagnosed?
Good, only because I like was financially able to go ahead with it, because basically here we have the NHS where it's like healthcare is free, but that mainly extends to like you can get instant care for free. If you've like broken your leg, you can instantly go to the hospital, like get a cast, get scans, you'll be fine. But if you're like, oh, I have like a twinge in my leg, you get put on like a waiting list. And because the NHS is underfunded, those waiting lists are really long. So I had been on the mental health waiting list for like ever and ever and ever. And I kept going, like, they kept trying to shove like talking therapy at me. And I was like, I really don't want that. And then I basically went to be like, hey, I think I have ADHD. And they were like, okay, we can put you on the waiting list for it because you're an adult and stuff. It's going to be like a year and a half, I think. And I was like, okay. And that's like a year and a half until you get seen, not until you get diagnosed. It's just like the initial meet. And I knew and this was like when was this? I think this was like, when did I start doing my meds? I think this was like November-ish. No, it was December. It was December, January-ish. I remember because my boyfriend vouched for me on my psychiatry thing and he had met me by then. So it was like December, January-ish. And I just felt like I had like, obviously the pandemic had happened and like stolen 2020 from me, as it did for many people. And I was just I was pretty sure that I had ADHD, and I always trust my intuition. I was like pretty sure for once about something. And I had already lost like so many years and so many items and so many relationships and so many jobs and so much stuff that I was like, I can't wait a year and a half. That's gonna like the recovery time that's going to take me to recover from whatever trauma I caused myself or whatever opportunities that I lose within that year and a half isn't worth it. I'm going to have to go private. So I went private and I paid not an alarming amount. If you're in the UK and you're looking into it, I think it was $500 for the consultation, diagnosis and stuff. Yeah. Where basically they just like, it was Zoom because it was, they had a meeting with me, and before the meeting they had someone who had known me and for a little while as an adult fill out a form of like, does she do this stuff? They had someone who knew me as a child, so my mother fill out a form saying, as a kid, did she do this stuff? And then they had me fill out a form that was like 5 pages long, which is just, why would you do that to me?
To a person with ADHD, yeah, potentially has ADHD, long paper.
Why do you hate
go
me?
For it, right?
Shambles,
right?
And they had me fill that out as well, and like a similar thing of like, do I do this thing? And then basically they used that to assess whether or not I had ADHD and whether it was inattentive, hyperactive, or combined. I ended up with combined. And then they did a Zoom meeting with me, checked if I maybe had BPD instead. I decided I don't, because I don't have any anger issues. I don't split on people, which is when you go between idolizing someone and hating them. And then like the meeting ended, and then like a couple of days later, after going over all the forms and his notes from the meeting, he diagnosed with ADHD. And then it was like another meeting and some more money to get the medication prescribed. And then I was on the private clinic's prescription list, which cost the same because of the medication that I was on. But I had to have a meeting with them like every month to get the re-prescription.
Right.
So that was like another 2 meetings. I was like,
super fun.
But then once they had done with those meetings, they were like, okay, these meds work for you. This is good. They moved me from the private clinic onto the NHS, so that the NHS would give me medication and I could just speak directly to my normal doctor instead of the private clinic.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that process, because it's so different, but like the same, but also so different. So that's amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. Do you have a little bit of time for a little bit of a Q&A if people have questions about your experience? Hold on, let me make sure that our queue is open. There you go. All right, and Taito just posted how you can ask a question. So if you have any questions, please know Harley is going to be speaking from their experience specifically. Thank you, Taito. You're lovely. So she's going to be speaking from her experience, like personally. So she's not here to diagnose you or tell you have ADHD or don't. But that being said, her experience is her experience.
The only thing I can diagnose you with is cool kid syndrome, and it's chronic.
It's chronic. Yeah, you're gonna be cold all the time. That's what it is. Yeah. What is your favorite type of bread? I think that is a very related question.
That's good. I like that one. Whole wheat bread is amazing, and I think white bread is the devil unless you're having like a dessert thing on it, like peanut butter or French toast.
White bread tastes like nothing, or it's like sugary. It's
exactly. That's why I would never have anything savory on white bread, like avocado toast. Absolutely not. Avocado toast is for whole wheat bread.
It's true.
Like peanut butter, that's for white bread, and that's fine. And I love whole wheat breads.
Having these particular things go on particular kinds of bread, definitely neurodivergent. It might not be. But
no, I think it probably
it's a very particular, if you get really, really set in these kind of things, like, dear Lord, do not put peanut butter on whole wheat bread. I will end you.
My partner, I'm visiting him. That's why I'm traveling to Canada. He was on the phone of me and he was like, okay, well, like, cause you can't leave the apartment. Like, what sort of like food do you want? Like the first night that you're here, like, what can I buy? So you have some groceries. And I was like, and he was like, what? And I was like, I don't know. Everything I eat is UK and it's a safe food. And I don't know, just pasta and sauce. Bye.
But I mean, you can't go wrong with pasta. I do. Listen, I love, hold on. White bread croissants. You can't replace a croissant.
Oh, croissants are lovely. I do love the thing about croissants that I don't love is, I do like croissants. I don't hate them, but, they're really squishy, and I love crunchy bread. I'm like, I'm so into like crunchy bread. I love crunchy, and I'm like, yes. So soft, chewy bread is not my bag, but I love crunchy bread.
We're back at square one here.
Yeah, back at the texture.
The texture is weird. Yeah. No, but it's interesting. It's like it's a peculiarity. Yeah, can't go wrong with pasta. Yeah, it's true. You can't go wrong with pasta. Well, so if that's all the questions about bread, that's amazing. Also, I have to bring this up. Thank you for writing Harry Potter. Thank you
no
so
problem.
much.
That's okay.
That was so amazing of you. Like, you did not have to do that, and then you did.
7 whole books. I wrote them all, and I just thought, I thought it was really important for Black kids growing up to see themselves in Hermione, so I explicitly described Hermione as Black, and that's canon, and that happened. But it was a lot to write, but I had to do it. There were so many stories that I wanted to tell, and I I'm glad that I managed to consult with some Jewish individuals when I was including those Jewish characters that I put in there and named and gave their own story arcs and stuff. And treated all the
and make
Irish
sure
characters
that
sensitively.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
very sensitive about that. And then, you know, Dumbledore being gay and everything, but like it's totally cool and not an afterthought. So
no, yeah, and it's not like he was like in love with someone that was evil who died and then like he never it was like it was good. It was all very healthy.
It was all very healthy.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, me.
Oh my gosh. Wait, I want to make sure we didn't miss any questions. Okay. All right. So that all being said, Harley, well, oh my God, I should have been definition of ADHD, motherfucker. Okay, I should have been spamming your link this whole time. I'm a terrible interviewer. So I'm just gonna over spam it now. Can you please go check out Breadwitchery's Linktree fam and follow her on all of the things?
I also co-founded Stories Told, where we play TTRPGs every weekend, and I'm currently on a Harry Potter themed one, which is run by Ed, who is lovely, and we fundraised for Mermaids UK throughout it, which was great because that's a trans charity, and it was very fun. It was a really cool campaign. Stories Told is good. You should all go follow it.
I have I'm gonna pitch myself like when actors go like, oh my God, are you a producer? Do you want to look at my script?
Oh, absolutely. Okay,
I have a little bit of a background in acting, and I would love the opportunity to be in any of your things going forward.
I mean, I would love to have you on one. That'd be amazing. That'd be so good. Ever. What are we collaborating tons this year? Let's go.
Let's do it. We're overdue. Again, if I saw you at TwitchCon now, I feel like I would actually say hi.
Yes,
not creepily, just like I'm pretty sure we made eye contact. I feel really bad. Like I still feel awful. It's one of those things, you know, those memories that you have that you just like you feel it, you go, oh, like you just say you have that. That's I can see me looking at you, making eye contact, or thinking that we made eye contact, and going, oh, okay, I can't say hi though. So like I know people have told me they've done that with me. So like I don't feel like I know that that's a normal thing to do, and it's okay. But I still like I guess super cringe feels about it. So
it's fine. We'll make it up. It's
we'll
okay.
do it. We'll fix it. Okay, love. So please enjoy your flight back. But tell a flight to see your significant other. Oh my God, I'm talking too fast. But tell everybody where they can find you in the time being.
Yeah. Hi everybody, I'm Holly. I'm breadwitchery everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, the Twitch. Sometimes I'm on Twitch. This website's okay, whatever. Anyway, and I also post a lot of cosplay stuff on Fanhouse, which is exciting, and lots of my Canada trip will be on Fanhouse too, so yay. I stream a lot of narrative-driven stuff, and I will be streaming soon. I just have to be in a hotel quarantine for 3 days, so I'll be back at it later this week and stuff, playing Nier Automata, and then hopefully jumping back into Dragon Age later in the month. But yeah, if you like my vibes at all, I'm at least like 50% less stressed and anxious about a flight that I have in 10 hours, usually on my stream. So if you like anything happening here, great news. I'm even better normally, I promise. I can't prove it until you come and watch. So.
It's true. You should go find out. We still need to talk about Fanhouse, but maybe not when you're 10 hours up to a flight. But remind me, we do need to.
When I land, I'm in the hotel and I'm like in the quarantine. I'm like, I have no one to talk to. And I'm so. Please talk to me about.
Please talk to me about Fanhouse. We put a pin in it and then both forgot. Which classic. Everything's coming up Millhouse. Everything's beautiful.
It's us.
Okay. All right. So Linktree, Breadwitchery. Please go give them a follow. I love you. I adore you. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with everybody and just to hang out with us today. We will be right, Bizzle fam. I love you.